I'm Ryan Tidwell, and I'm going to be talking about Steve Jobs. Just an overview. We'll be talking about general information, childhood, his high school, and the prank that made him famous, where he went to college, and then we'll be doing a history for college to present, and then why he is a hero or not. Some general information about Steve Jobs. He was born on February 22nd in 1955. He hasn't died yet. His height is 6'2". His alma mater is Reed College, and his religion is Buddhism. His childhood, he was put up for adoption when he was born, which is a lot more common back then than it is now. He was chosen in an orphanage, and he was actually picked because of his creativeness with how he played with his toys. So the people that adopted him thought that was really cool and knew that he would go far. When he was in elementary school, he befriended Steve Wozniak, and they were known for their creative pranks to the school. Steve Wozniak actually grew up to be his best friend and business partner for a long time. During elementary school, the two Steves, so Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, they got separated by their parents, and this created a rivalry between the two Steves for who could create the best pranks at the school and get in the most trouble. And then in middle school, both of them ended on bad terms with all their teachers, and this was not good at all because it gave them a bad reputation in high school. Alright, so in high school, they both took classes focused on electronics, but Steve Jobs, he always had to be better than Steve Wozniak because of the rivalry they had created in elementary school and middle school. And during his sophomore year, Steve Jobs, he started planning a prank, and this was against a phone company. The prank was pretty much created as a device that would make several tones to a phone, which would bypass the dialing system used to pay. Therefore, you can make free calls to wherever you wanted, long distance or short distance. The idea was very ingenious because Steve Jobs then would get known through college and pretty much start networking because of this. And to do this, he had the assistance of Steve Wozniak again, and they teamed up and they became friends again, and while they created the dubbed Blue Box. The Blue Box originally sold for $40, but as it became popular, Steve raised the price to $150 per box, depending on what day it was, and sometimes prices reached $300 to make profit and get going. The results of this were very, very extraordinary. Jobs, he actually created a little niche for business, and he started to like it. So he changed his focus from electronics to business and marketing, and he decided that when he goes to college, he's going to go into for revenue and business. He decided to go to college at Reed College in Portland, Oregon. It's a small private school, but it was excellent for liberal arts. And Steve Jobs chose it mainly for the reputation of making people individualized and feel that they could get through society on their own with no one's help. And then Steve Jobs, going along with this individualism, he actually dropped out during his freshman year to become self-taught. He said that one thing was, I can give myself as good as an education by myself without the help of anyone else. So, when he lived on campus until his education was complete, and he actually became famous with the student body because he was living off the school's bounty, which is incredible and illegal. When finished, he decided to make a business. Now, because he'd worked for Atari in high school, he knew that if he named it something before it would get more attention. So he decided to name his company Apple, just so it would be placed in front of Atari in the phone book. And this was his first idea of ingenious thinking. Alright, so from the college to the present, in 1978, Steve Jobs asked Mike Scott to be CEO of Apple. And then he used his free time so he could develop the Macintosh computer. He spent all his time doing this, and he actually went through several girlfriends because they thought that he was obsessed with work, and he overworked himself until he had to go onto drugs to make it better. In 1985, he created Next, which they made computers for businesses and universities. They actually became a competitor of Apple, which is interesting because they made high-end, like $5,000 computers back then, which it would be like $20,000 now. And they sold them for things like 5 megabytes of RAM, something like that. And that was really good back then. In 1986, Jobs bought the graphics group for $10 million. And later the graphics group was renamed Pixar. In 1996, Apple buys Next, and Steve Jobs becomes CEO of Apple after Mike Scott becomes corrupt, and he starts to lose patience in his job and unfocuses and everything. In 2004, Jobs was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He's going through a lot of cancers according to society, and a lot of them have been false. He got that removed in 2004 also, so it's not a big deal. In 2007, Jobs tried to demolish his 14-bedroom colonial mansion. The city voted against this, and it only got knocked down recently, as in February 2011, because there were a bunch of environmentalists always rioting against it, and it got passed in court finally. In 2008, the Jobs' obituary was posted on the internet by an anonymous poster, and this was very unique because Jobs then had to say his blood pressure on his keynote that fall, which was relating to the iPods. In 2009, Jobs underwent a liver transplant to help with his declining health. And then right now, Jobs' health issues are not stated specifically anywhere. It's rumored that he is terminally ill, but rumors shouldn't be believed because they were rumored that he was going to die in 2004, 2006, and 2008. That's not really good. And right now, Steve Jobs, he gets pulled over a lot because he drives a 2006 Mercedes-Benz SL55 AMG with no license plates. Instead of a license plate, he has a barcode, which is a reference to Back to the Future, and also shows his ingenious thinking and how pretty much everyone thinks he is a robot. Steve Jobs is a hero more than anyone thinks. Richard Branson, the CEO of Virgin Mobile, Virgin Airlines, Virgin Productions, anything you can think of like that, called Steve Jobs the entrepreneur that he admires the most. He says this because Steve Jobs has rebuilt Apple 2 times from collapsing, and it takes a really good businessman to do this, and Richard Branson admires that, which is great. And then Steve Jobs is also here because he's shaped the modern technology that we use today. Everyone walks around with iPods, iPod Nanos, iPod Touches, iPhones. And people always say that they want to get a Mac because it is the best computer out there. And without Steve Jobs, we would be 10 years behind in computers and electronics in general. If it weren't for his way of thinking that we need to go where something isn't yet, not where it is right now or has been, then we would not be at this place that we are now. And then this is my big bibliography, which is only 2 things.